Bianca didn't know the man in the shadows was the Alpha King. She didn't know he'd been circling her wine bar for weeks, watching from dark corners and moonlit streets, trying to convince himself that what he felt wasn't destiny. And she definitely didn't know that serving him one last drink would ignite a bond that could shatter kingdoms and rewrite the laws of the moon itself. All she knew was that if she didn't get the gilded vine locked up in the next 15 minutes, she'd miss the last safe hour before the night patrol started asking questions she couldn't afford to answer. The final patron had left half an hour ago, a merchant's wife who'd lingered over blackberry wine and gossip about the Moon Council's latest decree. Bianca worked with practiced efficiency, snuffing candles one by one, the scent of melted wax and aged oak filling the air. Her back ached from hours of standing, her fingers stained purple from uncorking bottles. The gilded vine wasn't much, a narrow stone building squeezed between a seamstress's shop and an abandoned apothecary. But it was hers in all the ways that mattered. She knew every wine bottle by touch, every creaking step on the wooden staircase, every customer's story before they told it. She was wiping down the last table when she heard it, the soft rustle of fabric against leather. Bianca's head snapped up. The corner booth, the one tucked beneath the stained glass window, the one she'd cleared 20 minutes ago, was occupied. A man sat motionless in the darkness, so utterly still he could have been carved from shadow itself. Only his eyes gave him away. Even across the room, they gleamed like molten silver, catching the dying candlelight and throwing it back at her with predatory focus. Her heart kicked against her ribs. The door was bolted. She'd locked it herself, sliding the heavy iron bar into place with her own trembling hands. Which meant he'd been here the entire time, sitting in silence while she moved through her closing routine, watching her like prey he wasn't quite ready to claim. "We're closed," Bianca said, keeping her voice level. She'd survived years in the Dominion by knowing when to bow and when to stand firm. Fear was a currency she'd learned never to spend. "You need to leave." The man didn't move. "One last drink." His voice was low, rough-edged, the kind that made her think of distant thunder and wolves running beneath winter moons. "I know you heard me." He leaned forward slightly, and the candlelight finally found his face. Bianca's breath stuttered. He was devastatingly beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful, all sharp cheekbones and controlled power, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders, and a jaw carved with the precision of old magic. But it was his eyes that held her captive, storm silver, like steel tempered in moonlight, carrying a weight she couldn't name. Grief, perhaps, or desperation wrapped in iron will. "Please," he said, and that single word made her hesitate. There was no command in it, no alpha dominance forcing her hand, just a simple request that sounded like it cost him everything to make. Bianca's first instinct was to refuse, to grab the silver knife she kept hidden behind the bar, to scream for the city watch patrolling 2 streets over. Instead, she found herself saying, "What are you drinking?" "Wine." His gaze never left her face. "Whatever you'd recommend for someone trying to remember who they were before the crown." She moved behind the bar, hyper-aware of his attention, tracking every step, every movement of her hands. Her fingers found a bottle of Lunar Red, aged 15 years, kept for customers who understood the difference between drinking and tasting. She'd poured thousands of glasses in her life, but something felt different tonight. Electric, like standing in an open field watching storm clouds gather overhead. When she brought the glass to his table, he wrapped his fingers around the stem without drinking, just held it, studying the deep crimson liquid, like it contained answers to questions he was afraid to ask. She looked at him more closely, the rigid set of his shoulders, the way shadows seemed to bend toward him rather than away, the faint shimmer of power that marked those born to rule. And recognition sparked cold in her chest. "You've been watching me," Bianca said slowly, not quite a question. His smile was winter itself. "For longer than you know." Before we continue, please hit the subscribe and like button and tell me which city you're tuning in from. I love to know where this story found you. Now back to the story. He returned the next evening. Bianca felt him before she saw him, a shift in the air that made the candle flames bend sideways and the wine bottles hum against their shelves. The handful of patrons scattered throughout the gilded vine went suddenly quiet, their conversations dying mid-sentence as some primal instinct whispered danger. She looked up from the ledger she'd been pretending to balance, and there he was, standing in the doorway like he'd been carved from midnight itself, moonlight pooling at his feet. Tonight, he wore no pretense of shadows. He stood in full view, letting everyone see the silver-threaded coat that marked royal lineage, the predatory grace that came from centuries of bloodline dominance. The bar's energy warped around him like a stone dropped in still water. "Bianca Vale," he said, his voice carrying across the room despite its quietness. "I was hoping you were open." Her blood went cold. He knew her name, her full name. Not the casual Bianca her regulars used, but her mother's name too, the one she'd spent years trying to bury beneath layers of mundane existence and careful anonymity. The merchant in the corner booth stood abruptly, coins scattering across his table. The seamstress's daughter grabbed her shawl. Within moments, the gilded vine emptied like water through a broken dam, patrons fleeing with the wisdom of prey animals, sensing an apex predator. The door swung shut behind the last customer. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. "You shouldn't have done that," Bianca said, her voice steadier than her hands. She set down her quill with deliberate care. "Those are paying customers. I can't afford. I'll compensate you for the lost revenue." He moved deeper into the bar, each step measured, controlled. "And before you refuse, understand that it's not charity. Consider it payment for your time. My time isn't for sale." "Everything in the Dominion is for sale, Bianca." He took the same corner booth as last night, folding his tall frame into the seat with liquid ease. "Except, it seems, your cooperation." She stayed behind the bar, using it as a barrier between them. "Who are you?" "You already know." Those storm-silver eyes found hers, holding her captive. "You recognized me last night. I saw it in your face." "I know what you are," Bianca corrected, her pulse hammering. "The question is why the Alpha King of Unearth is wasting time in a human wine bar when he has an entire kingdom to rule." Aaron Blackmore. The name whispered itself through her mind like a curse. The unmated Alpha King, the man who'd rebuilt the Dominion from civil war, who made council members tremble with a single glance. And he'd been watching her. "You want the truth?" Aaron leaned back, shadows playing across his features. "I needed to see if you were real. I'm standing right here." "No." His voice dropped lower, intimate in a way that made her skin prickle. "I needed to see if the woman who talks to her wine bottles when she thinks no one's listening, who remembers every customer's grief and joy, who survived losing her mother and still chose kindness over bitterness. I needed to see if you were real, or just another beautiful fiction." Bianca's breath caught. "You have no right." "I have every right," he interrupted, but without heat. When the moon whispers someone's name in your dreams for 3 months, you earn the right to investigate. The words hung between them like drawn blades. I don't bow to alphas, Bianca said finally, gripping the bar's edge until her knuckles whitened. I don't fawn or simper or play whatever game you're good. The single word cut through her building anger. I don't want you to. She stared at him, searching for the trap, the hidden demand. Then what do you want? Something cracked in his careful control. A flash of rawness that made him look suddenly, devastatingly human. I want one conversation where someone asks what I want instead of what the kingdom needs. I want an hour where I'm not the Alpha King making decisions that destroy lives. I want... He stopped abruptly, jaw clenching. You want to remember who you were before the crown, Bianca finished, repeating his words from last night. Yes. The admission settled between them, fragile and honest. Against every instinct screaming at her to maintain distance, Bianca poured 2 glasses of Lunar Red and carried them to his table. She sat down across from him, not beside him, not subservient, but as an equal. Talk, she said. So he did. He spoke of a mate who died in a council-arranged bond, a political alliance that turned poisonous and cost him the only person he'd ever chosen freely. He spoke of the weight of absolute power, of making decisions that saved thousands while destroying individuals. His voice remained level, controlled, but Bianca saw the grief carved into every word. She listened without offering empty comfort, and somehow that seemed to matter more. When his fingers brushed hers, reaching for his glass, the bond flared, hotter than last night, undeniable as gravity. Heat raced up her arm, and she gasped as moonlight seemed to pulse beneath her skin. Aaron went utterly still, his pupils dilating. It's stronger, he said hoarsely. What is? The bond. He looked at her like she was both salvation and damnation. Bianca, the Moon Council meets in 3 days. They're going to force another bond on me. A wolf-born daughter of noble blood who'll secure alliances and produce heirs and you came here looking for an escape, Bianca finished, yanking her hand back. No. His voice cracked with desperate honesty. I came here because the moon chose you, and I needed to know if I was strong enough to walk away. And are you? Aaron's smile was broken and bitter and beautiful. Not even close. Bianca didn't sleep that night. She lay in the narrow room above the gilded vine, watching moonlight crawl across her ceiling, feeling the phantom heat of Aaron's touch still burning against her skin. The bond, if that's what it truly was, pulsed like a second heartbeat. Foreign and terrifying and undeniable. By the time dawn broke, she'd made a decision. She found him in the palace gardens at sunrise, standing beneath an ancient oak where morning mist clung to the ground like scattered silk. He turned before she spoke, as if he'd been expecting her. Tell me about bonds, Bianca demanded without preamble. All of it. No pretty lies. Aaron studied her for a long moment, then gestured to a stone bench. Sit. This isn't a short story. She remained standing. He almost smiled. Bonds are the rarest magic in the Dominion. True bonds, not arranged political contracts, but moon-chosen connections, happen perhaps once in a generation. They're formed when the moon recognizes 2 souls as complementary halves, compatible in power, temperament, purpose. And they're always between wolves, Bianca said flatly. Always. The word fell heavy between them. Or they were. A human alpha bond hasn't occurred in over 3 centuries. The last one... He paused, jaw tightening. The last one nearly destroyed the kingdom. Bianca's hands clenched at her sides. Why? Because bonds create vulnerability. An alpha's power is absolute, but a bonded mate becomes both strength and weakness. If that mate is human, mortal, fragile, easily killed, it becomes a weapon anyone can exploit. Aaron's voice grew harder. The council learned this lesson in blood. They wrote laws specifically forbidding such bonds. Any human who bears an alpha's mark is to be removed before the bond can fully form. Removed. The clinical word made bile rise in her throat. You mean executed? Yes. The confirmation shouldn't have shocked her, but it did. Bianca turned away, staring blindly at the mist-shrouded gardens. My mother bore a wolf bond mark. Did you know that? She felt rather than saw Aaron go still behind her. Serena Vale, Bianca continued, her voice mechanically steady. She was a wine merchant's daughter who fell in love with a minor pack leader. The bond formed naturally, beautifully. They hid it for 2 years, wrapped her wrist in constant bandages, claimed it was a burn scar that wouldn't heal. Her breath hitched. I was 10 when the council's enforcers came. Bianca! They made him watch. The words scraped out like broken glass. Made my father watch while they executed her in the town square for the crime of being loved by someone stronger than herself. The bond killed him 3 days later. They said his heart just stopped. Silence pressed down, broken only by morning birds and her ragged breathing. I'm sorry, Aaron said quietly, and the rawness in his voice made it clear he understood exactly what those words cost. Sorry doesn't change the law. Bianca finally turned to face him and stopped. Blood seeped through his shirt sleeve, a dark stain spreading across the silver fabric. You're injured. She closed the distance between them before thinking, instinct overriding caution. What happened? It's nothing. A disagreement with the council turned physical. Let me see. Bianca. Let me see. Aaron's lips quirked, something almost fond flickering in those storm-grey eyes. He shrugged out of his coat and rolled up his sleeve, revealing 4 deep claw marks raking across his forearm. Already healing with wolf speed, but still vicious. Who did this? Bianca demanded, examining the wounds with practiced efficiency. Her mother had taught her basic healing before she died, skills humans needed to survive in a wolf-dominated world. Elder Malin. She objected to my attendance last night. Said I was neglecting my duties. Objected with claws? She's always been direct. Bianca found herself almost laughing despite everything. She pulled a clean handkerchief from her pocket, wine-stained but serviceable, and began cleaning the wounds with surprising gentleness. Aaron watched her work, his breathing growing measured, controlled. I didn't come looking for a bond, you know, that first night at your bar. Then why did you come? Because I was tired. The confession emerged quiet, unguarded. Tired of being the king everyone needs and no one sees. Tired of making decisions that save kingdoms while destroying hearts. Your bar was the only place in the Dominion that felt real. You felt real. Bianca's hand stilled against his skin. The bond pulsed between them, stronger now, insistent, like the moon itself was pulling them together with invisible threads. This is dangerous, she whispered. I know. They'll kill me, just like they killed my mother. I know. His free hand came up, hovering near her face without quite touching. Which is why you should walk away. Forget the bond. Forget me. Live your life in peace. And you. I'll endure whatever bond the council arranges and pretend my heart didn't choose someone else. Bianca looked up at him, really looked. Saw the king everyone feared, yes, but also the man beneath, the one who remembered names, who carried quiet grief like a second skin, who'd rather destroy himself than put her in danger. "I don't want to walk away," she admitted, the words terrifying and true. "Neither do I," Aaron breathed. "Moon help us both. Neither do I." His hand finally touched her cheek, and the bond sang between them with such intensity that Bianca gasped. This was more than attraction, more than desire. This was recognition, completion, the feeling of finding something she hadn't known she was missing. Aaron's forehead dropped to rest against hers, his breath warm against her lips. "We can't." "I know. The council." "I know." But neither of them pulled away. A sharp whistle cut through the morning air. Aaron jerked back, his entire body going rigid. Bianca followed his gaze to the garden entrance, where a figure in council robes stood watching. The man's eyes were cold, calculating, fixed on the space between them that suddenly felt damning. "They're watching you," Bianca said, fear turning her blood to ice. "No," Aaron corrected grimly, his hand unconsciously moving to shield her. "They're watching us." The summons came at midday, delivered by a stone-faced palace guard who waited with inhuman patience while Bianca wiped wine stains from her hands. "The Moon Council requests your presence," he intoned, as if reading from ancient script. "A matter concerning tavern licensing in the lower districts." Licensing. The lie was almost laughable. Bianca changed into her cleanest dress, deep burgundy, her mother's favorite color, and followed the guard through winding streets to the palace. She'd never been inside before. Humans rarely were. Unless they were servants or about to become cautioned examples. The palace was all pale stone and silver filigree, moonlight made architectural. Her footsteps echoed too loudly against marble floors as the guard led her through corridors lined with portraits of previous Alpha Kings, each one more imposing than the last. "Wait here," the guard instructed, depositing her in an antechamber outside massive oak doors, carved with lunar phases. Then he left. Bianca stood alone in the silence, her pulse hammering. Through the doors, voices murmured, too low to distinguish words, but the tone was unmistakable. Judgment, verdict, condemnation. She moved closer, pressing her ear against the wood. "Cannot allow this to continue." The voice was female, sharp as broken glass. Elder Malin. 3 nights, Aaron. 3 nights you've been seen with the human. The bond is forming. We all feel it. My personal affairs are not council business. Aaron's voice, colder than Bianca had ever heard it. Your personal affairs become kingdom business when they threaten stability. Another voice, male, smooth as poisoned honey. The law is clear. Human alpha bonds are forbidden. The consequences are non-negotiable. Silas, I'm aware of the law. I wrote half of them. Then you know what must be done. Malin again, brooking no argument. The human must be removed, quickly, cleanly, before the bond becomes irrevocable. Removed. The word echoed in Bianca's skull, overlapping with memories of her mother's execution, the crowd, the blade, her father's broken scream. But instead of fear, something else rose in her chest. White-hot and furious. Rage. You're suggesting execution, Aaron said, each word precisely enunciated. I'm stating fact, Malin replied. You are the Alpha King, the strongest wolf in 5 generations. If the bond completes with a human, every enemy we have will target her to destroy you. You become vulnerable. The kingdom becomes vulnerable. We will not allow history to repeat itself. And if I refuse? silence stretched, dangerous and taut. "Then the council will act without your blessing," Silas said smoothly, "for the good of the Dominion. Surely you understand, old friend." The doors burst open. Bianca stood framed in the doorway, trembling with fury rather than fear, her green eyes blazing. 7 council members sat in a half-circle, faces ranging from shock to barely concealed contempt. Aaron stood before them, every muscle coiled tight, looking like he was seconds from shifting. "I understand perfectly," Bianca announced, her voice ringing clear. "You're cowards who'd rather murder an innocent woman than admit your laws are barbaric." "How dare you?" Malin started. "I dare, because you're already planning my death. What more can you do? Kill me twice?" Bianca stepped fully into the chamber, ignoring the guards who moved to intercept her. "My mother died for the crime of being loved. I won't apologize for the same." "Bianca?" Aaron's voice held a warning, but also something else. Pride, perhaps. Elder Malin rose, her silver hair pulled back severe, her eyes winter-cold. She was older than the palace itself, some whispered, powerful enough to challenge an alpha and live. "The girl shows spirit. Unfortunate that spirit will be wasted. Choose your next words carefully." "Malin," Aaron said, moving to stand between them. "Or what, my king?" The elder's smile was knife-thin. "Will you choose a human over your kingdom, over everything your bloodline built, over the thousands who depend on your strength remaining unchallenged?" Aaron said nothing, but Bianca saw the war raging behind his eyes. King versus man. Duty versus desire. Everything he'd built versus everything he wanted. "He doesn't have to choose," Bianca said quietly. "I'll leave. Tonight. I'll disappear so thoroughly not even the moon could find me." "No." The word exploded from Aaron. "It's the only solution that—" "No." He turned to her, and the raw desperation in his face stole her breath. "Running won't save you. They'll hunt you. They'll find you. And I won't be there to—" He stopped, jaw clenched. "Touching," Silas interjected, standing with predatory grace. He was younger than the other council members, handsome in a cold way, with amber eyes that held no warmth. "But irrelevant. The council has made its decision." He pulled a sealed parchment from his robes and placed it deliberately on the council table. Black wax, red ribbon, official decree. "As of this moment, Bianca Vale is declared a threat to kingdom stability. Immediate removal is authorized." Silas's smile was all teeth. "The king, of course, need not involve himself. We'll handle this unfortunate necessity with appropriate discretion." "You're authorizing assassins," Aaron said, his voice gone deadly quiet. "We're protecting our king." Malin's expression held no remorse, even from himself. Aaron looked at the decree, then at the council, then finally at Bianca. She saw the moment something inside him broke, or perhaps hardened into something unbreakable. "This council is dismissed," he said. "Aaron, get out." The command held such power that even the elders flinched. They filed out slowly, Malin's cold gaze promising this wasn't over, Silas's smile suggesting he'd already won. When the chamber emptied, Aaron turned to Bianca. "Pack nothing. Bring nothing. I'm taking you somewhere they can't reach. Running proves them right. Living proves them wrong." His hands cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "Please, Bianca, let me protect you." She wanted to argue, to rage, to refuse. But the bond pulsed between them, and she felt his terror, bone deep and genuine, at losing her. "Where?" she asked. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere." Glass shattered overhead. Bianca looked up just in time to see a figure in black drop through the skylight, blade already drawn, death in their eyes. The assassins hadn't waited for nightfall. Aaron moved with inhuman speed, intercepting the assassin mid-fall. They collided in a tangle of limbs and flashing steel, hitting the marble floor hard enough to crack it. The blade meant for Bianca's throat, instead, carved a line across Aaron's shoulder. He didn't even flinch. "Run," he snarled, wolf bleeding into his voice as he grappled with the attacker. Bianca ran. Not away. Toward. She fled through palace corridors with guards shouting behind her, her heart a war drum in her chest. If they wanted her dead, she wouldn't die in the palace where Aaron would be forced to watch. She'd die on her own terms, in her own place. She'd die at the Gilded Vine. Night had fallen by the time Bianca reached the wine bar, her lungs burning, her dress torn from climbing garden walls and vaulting through back alleys. The familiar sight of her bar, crooked sign, weathered door, stained glass window catching moonlight, nearly broke her. This was home, the only real home she'd known since her parents died. And she was going to lose it. Bianca unlocked the door with shaking hands, stepped inside, and began her closing routine. If these were her last moments, she'd spend them doing what she loved. She lit candles methodically, wiped down tables, straightened bottles. The mundane rhythm steadied her breathing, gave her something to focus on besides the terror clawing at her throat. She was uncorking a bottle of Lunar Red, one last drink for herself, when the door exploded inward. 3 figures in black swept through like smoke made solid, faces hidden behind masks, blades gleaming with the sickly green sheen of moon-poisoned silver. The kind of silver that could kill wolves, or humans bonded to them. "Bianca Vale," the lead assassin said, voice muffled. "By order of the Moon Council." Bianca threw the wine bottle. It shattered against the assassin's head, red wine spraying like blood. The figure stumbled, and Bianca grabbed the silver knife she kept behind the bar, the one she'd refused to use on Aaron, and lunged. She'd never been a fighter, never wanted to be. But she refused to die quietly. The blade caught the second assassin's arm. He hissed, batting her knife away with contemptuous ease, then backhanded her across the face. Bianca's head snapped sideways, stars exploding behind her eyes. She tasted blood. "Make it quick," the lead assassin instructed. "No suffering. The king would sense it." The third assassin raised his blade, and something inside Bianca ignited. Power erupted from her core, wild, untamed, blazing silver-white. Moonlight burst from her skin in waves, throwing the assassins backward like leaves in a storm. Bottles shattered, tables overturned. The very air screamed with energy that shouldn't exist in human veins. Bianca stared at her hands, watching them glow with impossible light. "What?" she gasped. "Moon gifted," the lead assassin spat, recovering his footing. "The bond's already awakening her. We're too late." "Then we kill her anyway." They came at her again, coordinated and lethal. Bianca moved on pure instinct, moonlight pouring from her hands in defensive bursts. She had no training, no control, just raw power and desperate will. She sent one assassin crashing through her stained glass window, burned another's hands when he grabbed her wrist. But there were 3 of them, and 1 of her, and instinct could only carry her so far. A blade sliced across her ribs, pain white-hot and immediate. Bianca screamed, stumbling backward, her power flickering like a dying candle. The lead assassin advanced, raising his weapon for the killing blow. The wall exploded. Aaron burst through stone and timber in his alpha form, massive, terrifying, more wolf than man, with fur the color of midnight and eyes burning molten silver. His roar shook the building's foundations. He hit the lead assassin with the force of an avalanche, jaws closing around the man's throat. Bone crunched. The assassin went limp. The remaining 2 attackers fled through the shattered window. Aaron shifted back to human form, breathing hard, blood, not his own, staining his mouth. He crossed to Bianca in 3 strides, gathering her against his chest with trembling hands. "You're hurt," he said hoarsely, pressing his palm against her bleeding side. "I'm alive." Bianca's laugh came out broken. Aaron, what was that? The light, the power, the bond." His voice held awe and terror in equal measure. "It's awakening your moon gift. Bianca, humans don't have gifts. They can't, unless they're bonded to an alpha," a voice finished from the doorway. Silas Thorne stepped through the rubble, somehow immaculate despite the destruction, amber eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction. Behind him, a dozen council enforcers formed a wall of muscle and menace. "How touching," Silas continued, circling them like a predator assessing prey. "The mighty Alpha King, reduced to protecting his fragile human. Tell me, Aaron, what happens when the next assassins come? And the next? Will you abandon your throne to guard her every moment? Will you watch her grow old and die while you remain eternal? Will you hold her corpse and remember that loving her made you weak?" "Leave," Aaron growled, positioning himself between Silas and Bianca. "Now. Or what? You'll kill a council member, start a civil war over a human?" Silas's smile was poison sweet. "She's your weakness now, old friend. Everyone can see it, and weaknesses must be eliminated." Aaron's hands clenched, claws extending. Bianca grabbed his wrist. Through their connection, she felt his fury, barely controlled, barely human. One wrong word, and he'd tear Silas apart, start the very war the council feared. "Don't," she whispered. "He's baiting you." Aaron's breathing came ragged, but he didn't move. Silas's expression darkened with disappointment. He turned to leave, then paused. "When she dies, and she will, mortality sees to that. What will you become, Aaron? The king who loved and lost, or the monster we all know you're capable of being?" The enforcers withdrew, leaving destruction and implication in their wake. Bianca sagged against Aaron, adrenaline draining away, leaving only pain and exhaustion. He lowered them both to the floor, cradling her against his chest, his hands gentle despite their trembling. "Let me see," he murmured, carefully peeling back her torn dress to examine the wound. The cut was shallow but long, bleeding steadily. Aaron's healing touch warmed her skin, knitting flesh back together with supernatural efficiency. But as he worked, Bianca noticed something else. Her wrist burned. She looked down and gasped. There, blazing silver against her skin, was a mark that hadn't existed an hour ago. Intricate and beautiful, like moonlight captured in ink. The Alpha sigil. Aaron's sigil. The bond had marked her, publicly, irrevocably, undeniably. "Aaron," she breathed, holding up her wrist. He stared at the mark, and something between joy and devastation crossed his face. "There's no hiding it now," he said quietly. "Everyone will know. The council, the kingdom. You're mine, and I'm yours, and there's no turning back." Bianca touched the mark, feeling power hum beneath it. "Good." His eyes snapped to hers. "You don't understand what this means." "I understand perfectly." She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her gaze. "It means choosing love over fear. It means fighting for something worth dying for." "I won't let you die." "Then don't," Bianca said simply. "Don't let either of us die. Change the laws. Change the kingdom. Be the king who rewrites destiny. Aaron's laugh was broken and beautiful. He pressed his forehead to hers, the bond singing between them, and whispered, "You're going to get us both killed. Or we'll survive together." Together, he echoed, like a prayer and a promise combined. Outside, the moon reached its apex, and somewhere in the palace, the council prepared for war. Bianca woke in silk sheets that cost more than her entire wine bar. Morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the palace bedroom in shades of pearl and gold. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then the events of last night crashed back. The assassins, the awakening power, the mark burning on her wrist. She sat up too quickly, pain flaring across her ribs where the blade had cut her. The wound was healed, barely a scar remaining, but the memory of it lingered. "Easy." Aaron appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray with tea and bread. He'd changed into simple clothes, linen shirt, dark pants, looking more like a merchant than a king. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. He hadn't slept. "The seers want to examine you this morning." "Seers?" "Moon seers. They verify bonds, interpret marks, advise the council on matters of destiny." He set the tray on the bedside table with careful precision. "They've been requesting your presence since dawn, rather insistently." Bianca looked down at her wrist. The alpha sigil gleamed silver bright in the morning light, impossibly intricate. A crowned wolf encircled by lunar phases, with vine-like patterns spiraling outward. Beautiful. Damning. "What will they say?" she asked quietly. "The truth." Aaron sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining careful distance. "That the moon chose you. That the bond is genuine and irrevocable. That you're—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "That I'm what?" "My mate. My equal. In the eyes of moon law, you're already a queen." The words hung heavy between them, weighted with implications Bianca was only beginning to understand. The seers arrived an hour later. 3 ancient wolves, gender indeterminate, eyes clouded white with prophetic sight. They circled Bianca like she was an artifact to be appraised, making soft humming sounds that raised the hair on her arms. "Show us," the eldest commanded. Bianca extended her wrist. The seer took her hand with surprising gentleness, running withered fingers across the mark. The moment they made contact, Bianca gasped. Power surged through the connection, the seer's gift touching hers, reading the bond's truth written in moonlight and magic. "Genuine," the seer pronounced, voice echoing strangely. "Moon-chosen, alpha-bonded, rare, dangerous, inevitable." Those clouded eyes found Aaron. "The moon has decided, King. Will you deny her choice?" "Never," Aaron said without hesitation. The seers exchanged glances that conveyed entire conversations. Finally, the eldest spoke again. Then, "Let it be witnessed. The human Bianca Vale bears the mark of Alpha King Aaron Blackmore. The bond is recognized. The moon has crowned her." They departed as quickly as they'd arrived, leaving Bianca trembling. "What happens now?" she asked. Aaron's expression was carefully neutral. "Now, the entire court knows. Within the hour, the entire kingdom will know. You'll be watched, judged, likely threatened. Some will see you as a queen, others as a target. And you?" Bianca met his gaze directly. "What do you see?" He crossed to her slowly, like approaching something precious and fragile. "I see the woman who fought assassins with raw power and no training, who stands in the face of a kingdom's condemnation and refuses to bow. who makes me believe I can be more than the crown they forced on my head. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I see everything I've ever wanted and know I have no right to claim. What if I want to be claimed? Bianca, what if I choose this? She stood, closing the distance between them, wrist extended so the mark caught the light. You keep acting like I'm a victim in this, like the bond is something that happened to me. But I'm standing here of my own free will, Aaron. I'm choosing you. You don't understand what you're choosing. The council will fight this. There'll be challenges to my rule, attempts on your life, political nightmares. Then we face them together. Bianca took his hand, pressing his palm against the mark. The bond flared between them, warm and right and inevitable. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. If the moon chose me, then let the kingdom see what a human can become when loved by an alpha king. Something broke in Aaron's carefully maintained control. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. I don't deserve you, he said hoarsely. Good thing the moon disagrees. His laugh was wet, almost a sob. When he pulled back, his eyes held a fierce tenderness that stole her breath. If we do this, if we stand together publicly, there's no going back. You become a target, a political piece. Everything you were before disappears. I was alone before, running a wine bar in memory of dead parents, hiding from a world that killed my mother for daring to love. Bianca cupped his face, thumbs brushing his cheekbones. That's not living. That's surviving. You taught me the difference. Aaron kissed her then, soft, reverent, like sealing a promise neither of them dared to break. The bond sang between them, and Bianca felt his devotion, his terror, his desperate hope that somehow this impossible thing could work. When they broke apart, Aaron's expression had shifted from haunted to determined. Then we announce it properly. Tonight, at the Moon Court gathering, I present you as my chosen mate. Let the kingdom see that their king has decided. And if the council objects, then the council learns that some things matter more than politics. News of the bonded human spread through the palace like wildfire. Bianca felt the weight of every stare as Aaron escorted her through marble corridors to her new chambers. Not the guest room, but the queen's wing, empty since Aaron's first mate died. Courtiers whispered behind jeweled fans. Guards watched with expressions ranging from awe to barely concealed disgust. One young wolf, barely more than a boy, actually bowed as they passed. An older noble spat at Bianca's feet. Aaron's growl made the noble pale and flee. This is what you'll face, he said quietly. Every day. Some will revere you. Others will hate you for daring to exist. Let them hate. Bianca lifted her chin. I've survived worse than court gossip. They reached the queen's chambers, a suite of rooms decorated in silver and midnight blue, overlooking gardens that glowed with moonflowers. Aaron hesitated at the threshold. I won't enter unless you invite me, he said. These are your rooms, Bianca, your space. The bond doesn't give me the right to. Aaron. She smiled, taking his hand. Come inside. Relief and longing warred across his face as he followed her in, closing the door on the watching court. Later, as evening fell and they prepared for the formal announcement, a messenger arrived with urgent news. My king, the guard said, barely concealing his agitation. Silas Thorne has disappeared. His chambers are empty, his belongings gone. No one has seen him since last night. Aaron and Bianca exchanged dark glances. "He's planning something," Bianca said. "I know." Aaron's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "But whatever he's planning, we'll face it together." Outside, the moon rose full and heavy, and somewhere in the darkening kingdom, betrayal gathered its forces. The moon court gathering was held in the grand hall, where silver chandeliers dripped like frozen starlight, and every noble family in the Dominion had assembled to witness history, or scandal, depending on who you asked. Bianca stood beside Aaron at the dais, wearing a gown the color of midnight wine, the alpha sigil on her wrist displayed for all to see. Hundreds of eyes tracked her every breath, the weight of their judgment pressed down like physical force. "Citizens of Unearth," Aaron began, his voice carrying through the vast space with alpha command. "Tonight, I present to you." The doors exploded inward. Silas Thorne strode through the wreckage, flanked by 24 warriors in council colors. But these weren't ceremonial guards. They were battle-hardened fighters, armed with moon-silver weapons, moving with lethal coordination. Behind them came half the Moon Council, including Elder Malin, their faces set with grim determination. "Forgive the interruption," Silas said, his voice dripping false courtesy. "But we cannot allow this farce to continue." Aaron moved in front of Bianca instantly, a living shield. "Stand down, Silas. This is treason." "No, old friend. This is salvation." Silas gestured and his warriors spread out, surrounding the dais, cutting off escape routes. The gathered nobles scattered, pressing against walls, some fleeing entirely. "You've been compromised, weakened by human sentiment. The bond has made you unfit to rule." "The seers confirmed the bond," Aaron said, his voice going deadly quiet. "Moon law recognizes her." Moon law was written when Alpha Kings had the strength to lead without mortal distractions. Malin stepped forward, her ancient face impassive. "We gave you a choice, Aaron. You chose poorly. Now the council chooses for you." "By what authority?" "By the authority of wolves who've governed for centuries, while kings rose and fell." Malin's gaze flicked to Bianca with cold assessment. "Remove the human, kill the weakness, restore the king." Silas smiled. "Alive or dead, Aaron. Your choice. Abdicate willingly, and the girl lives, exiled, powerless but breathing. Resist, and we take her head along with your crown." The bond flared hot with Aaron's rage. Bianca felt his wolf rising, felt control slipping like sand through fingers. He was seconds from shifting, from tearing through everyone in reach. She grabbed his wrist, her mark burning against his skin. "Don't," she whispered. "That's what they want. They threatened you. And if you lose control, they win. They prove you're compromised." Bianca's mind raced, sorting through political implications, looking for the angle everyone else was missing. "Aaron, listen. How did Silas know about tonight's announcement? We decided only hours ago." Aaron's fury paused, confusion flickering across his face. "Someone told him," Bianca continued, speaking quickly, quietly. "Someone in your inner circle. But who benefits from a coup? Not the council. They lose legitimacy if they're seen as usurpers. Not Silas alone. He's one wolf against an Alpha King." She turned to face Silas directly, ignoring the weapons pointed at her. "Unless this isn't about removing Aaron at all, it's about replacing him. With you." Silas's smile faltered. "You're not here on council orders," Bianca said, certainty crystallizing. "You're using their fears to stage a coup." "Elder Malin, when did the council vote to authorize this action?" Malin's expression cracked, confusion bleeding through. There was no vote. Silas said it was an emergency session, that Aaron had... She stopped, realization dawning. You lied. I acted, Silas corrected sharply. Someone had to. You're all too weak to do what's necessary. What's necessary? Aaron's voice had gone ice cold. Or what's convenient? Tell me, Silas, who promised you the throne if you removed me? Which neighboring pack offered you an alliance if you delivered the dominion? Silas's jaw clenched. The northern reaches, Bianca guessed, pieces falling into place. They've wanted access to southern trade routes for decades. With Aaron removed and you installed as puppet king, they'd have it. She's clever. I'll give you that. Silas drew his blade, moon silver, etched with runes of binding. Pity cleverness won't save her. He moved with supernatural speed, crossing the space between them in a heartbeat, blade aimed for Bianca's throat. Aaron met him mid-lunge. They collided with bone-shattering force, wolf against wolf, alpha power shaking the hall's foundations. Silas was strong, but Aaron was fury incarnate. He fought with the desperate savagery of a man protecting his mate, and it was terrifying to witness. Blood sprayed. Silver clashed against claw. Aaron's control shredded further with every second. Bianca saw it happening, saw him losing himself to the wolf, to the rage, becoming the very monster the council feared. If he killed Silas like this, lost in bloodlust, they'd never trust him again. She had to stop this, had to reach him. The mark on her wrist burned molten hot. Power surged through her veins, that same wild moonlight from the wine bar, but stronger now, more focused. Bianca raised her hand and pulled. Silver light erupted from her palm, wrapping around Aaron like gentle chains, not restraining but grounding. She poured everything through their bond, her love, her trust, her absolute certainty that he was more than his rage. Come back, she thought desperately. Come back to me. Aaron froze mid-strike, his claws inches from Silas's throat. His eyes, pure wolf burning gold, found hers across the distance. For a heartbeat, she saw him teetering on the edge of control. Then he breathed out, and humanity flooded back. He stepped away from Silas, shifting back to human form, standing tall despite the blood covering him. I am not the monster you fear, he said, his voice steady, addressing the entire hall. I am the king who chooses love over fear, unity over division, and I will not destroy a man, even a traitor, while lost to rage. He turned to the guards who'd remained loyal. Arrest Silas Thorne for treason, conspiracy, and attempted murder of the crown's chosen mate. Silas laughed bitterly as they seized him. You think this changes anything? You're still weak, Aaron. She makes you weak. No, Aaron said quietly, finding Bianca's eyes. She makes me strong enough to be merciful. That's the difference between a king and a tyrant. Elder Malin stepped forward, her ancient face lined with shame. We were wrong, my king. I apologize for my part in this. The council has failed you. The council has failed itself, Aaron corrected. You let fear guide you instead of wisdom. You let laws written in blood 3 centuries ago dictate the present. He took Bianca's hand, pulling her forward, so they stood united before the assembly. No more. The Moon Council is hereby dissolved. Gasps echoed through the hall. In its place, I will establish a new council, one that includes human voices, that recognizes bonds of choice rather than political convenience, that serves the people rather than ancient prejudice. Aaron's voice rang with absolute authority. And this woman beside me, who stood against assassins and faced down a coup with nothing but intelligence and courage, will help me build it. Silence stretched, taut and trembling. Then, somewhere in the crowd, a young wolf began to clap. Another joined, then another. Soon the hall erupted in applause, not universal, but enough. Enough to signal change. Malin bowed her head in acknowledgement. "As you command, my king." The old order had fallen, and in its place, something new, uncertain, dangerous, but alive with possibility, began to rise. The trial took 3 days. Silas Thorne stood in chains before a newly assembled tribunal, wolves and humans both, chosen for wisdom rather than bloodline. Evidence of his conspiracy with the northern reaches was damning. Sealed letters, promised trade agreements, plans to fracture the Dominion from within. He showed no remorse. "I did what was necessary," Silas said when given the chance to speak. "You'll all see. A human queen will destroy this kingdom faster than any enemy army." "Then let it be destroyed and rebuilt better," Aaron replied evenly. "I'd rather rule ashes made with love than an empire built on fear." The tribunal sentenced Silas to life imprisonment in the northern fortress, isolated, powerless, alive but forgotten. Elder Malin's trial was shorter and more complex. She'd been manipulated, yes, but had also allowed her fear to overcome her judgment. She'd authorized surveillance, enabled threats, stood by while assassins were deployed. "I spent 300 years protecting this kingdom," Malin said, her voice heavy with age and regret. "Somewhere along the way, I forgot I was meant to protect its people, not just its traditions." The tribunal stripped her of council authority, but granted her an advisory role, no power to enforce, only to counsel. A mercy she accepted with dignified gratitude. "The young king is wiser than I gave him credit for," she told Bianca privately afterward. "Guard him well, child, and forgive an old fool who mistook strength for cruelty." Bianca clasped the elder's weathered hand. "Help me rewrite the laws, and we'll call it even." Malin's smile was small but genuine. "I suspect you'll rewrite them with or without my help. But yes, I'll aid you." The new laws took months to draft, and mere days to transform the kingdom. First law: all bonds required mutual consent. Arranged political bonds were forbidden. The moon might choose, but hearts must choose back. Second law: humans held equal legal status to wolves in all matters of property, marriage, and governance. No longer subjects, citizens. Third law: the Moon Council was reformed as the Unity Council, with equal representation from wolf packs and human settlements. Decisions required majority agreement from both groups. Resistance came, of course. Old noble families grumbled about tradition. Some packs threatened secession. But Aaron held firm, and slowly, grudgingly, the kingdom bent toward justice. Through it all, Bianca worked tirelessly. She mediated disputes between humans who'd never had voices and wolves who'd never had to listen. She rewrote trade agreements. She sat in endless council meetings, learning politics and law with the same focus she'd once applied to winemaking. She barely had time to breathe, let alone process what her life had become. One evening, 3 months after the coup, Aaron found her in the palace library, surrounded by legal texts and half-empty teacups. "Come with me," he said, offering his hand. "Aaron, I still have to review the Southern Territory petitions. Tomorrow, tonight, you're taking a break." She started to protest, then saw the determination in his eyes. With a sigh, she let him lead her through winding palace corridors, down servant stairs, out a rarely used side entrance. They walked through moonlit streets, cloaked and anonymous, until they reached a familiar narrow building, wedged between a seamstress's shop and an abandoned apothecary. The Gilded Vine. Bianca's breath caught. She'd barely thought about the wine bar in months, too consumed with her new responsibilities. But seeing it again, the crooked sign, the repaired stained glass window, the warm light spilling from within, felt like coming home. "I had it restored," Aaron said quietly, "replaced what the attack destroyed, restocked the wines. It's yours, Bianca, whenever you want it." She pushed open the door, and the scent of oak and aged wine wrapped around her like an embrace. Everything was exactly as she remembered, down to the position of the bottles behind the bar. "Aaron," she breathed, "this is a reminder." He closed the door, shutting out the world. "You're my mate, yes, my queen, in all but formal coronation. But you're also Bianca Vale, who talks to wine bottles and remembers everyone's stories. I won't let the crown erase that." Bianca moved behind the bar, running her fingers along the familiar wood, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." "Will you pour me a drink?" Aaron asked, settling into the corner booth, the same one where this had all begun. "One last drink, just like I asked that first night." She laughed, wet and wobbly, and selected a bottle of Lunar Red. The ritual steadied her, uncorking, pouring, carrying the glass to his table. But this time, she sat beside him instead of keeping her distance. They drank in comfortable silence, shoulders touching, the bond humming contentedly between them. "I've been thinking," Aaron said eventually, studying his wine with the same intensity he'd shown months ago, "about what comes next. More laws, more reforms, more angry nobles threatening secession. Marriage." Bianca's hand froze halfway to her glass. "Not—" Aaron set down his wine, turning to face her fully. "I'm not proposing. Not yet. Not like this." He took her hand, thumb brushing across the alpha sigil, still gleaming on her wrist. "But I wanted you to know I'm thinking about it. About asking you properly, when the kingdom settles. When you've had time to understand what this life really means." "Aaron, no pressure," he continued quickly. "We're bonded, yes, but that doesn't obligate you to anything beyond what you're comfortable with. If you want to be my mate without the crown, we'll make that work. If you want to keep the wine bar and only visit the palace occasionally, we'll make that work too. I'm not asking you to choose between who you were and who you've become. I'm saying you can be both." Bianca stared at him, this impossibly powerful king who'd just offered to reshape his entire kingdom around her comfort, and felt her heart swell to breaking. "And if I said yes?" she asked softly. "If I wanted the crown, the title, all of it?" "Then I'd ask you properly, with witnesses and ceremony, and every romantic gesture I could think of. I'd give you a choice." "Bianca, the way my first mate never had, the way your mother never had. A real choice, made freely, without coercion or political pressure, or moon destiny forcing your hand. That's what this is, isn't it?" She gestured around the wine bar. "You're giving me an escape route, reminding me I have options. I'm reminding you that you're more than my mate. You're you, first and always." Aaron's voice roughened with emotion. "And whatever you choose, queen or wine merchant, palace or bar, crown or freedom, I'll love you exactly the same." Bianca set down her glass carefully. She took his face in both hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Ask me." "What?" "Ask me. Right now, properly. Bianca, you just said you need time to—" "Aaron Blackmore." She smiled, fierce and certain and radiant. "Ask me to marry you." His breath caught. For a moment, the Alpha King looked utterly lost, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. Then he slid from the booth to kneel on the worn wooden floor of her wine bar, taking both her hands in his. "Bianca Vale," he said, voice shaking slightly. "Will you marry me? Not because the moon chose you, not because the kingdom needs you, but because I love you, and I want to spend whatever time we have, mortal or eternal, learning every part of who you are." The answer should have been simple, should have been immediate. But Bianca found herself hesitating, not from doubt, but from the sheer weight of what he was offering. A crown, a kingdom, a complete transformation of everything she'd known. "Can I think about it?" she asked quietly. "Not because I don't love you. I do, desperately. But because this is the first time in my life anyone's given me a real choice. And I want to honor that by making it deliberately." Aaron's smile was understanding, tinged with relief. "Take all the time you need." He rose, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I should go. Let you think in peace." "Stay," Bianca said, "just for tonight. No king, no queen, no politics, just us and the wine." So he stayed. They talked until dawn crept through the stained glass window, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. They spoke of childhoods and dreams, of fears and hopes, of the future they might build together, if she said yes. When Aaron finally left, slipping out before the city woke, Bianca stood alone in her wine bar, the weight of an unanswered proposal resting gently on her shoulders. Outside, the moon faded into morning light, and somewhere between heartbeats, Bianca began to understand what her answer would be. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the night Aaron first walked into the Gilded Vine, Bianca stood before a mirror in the Queen's chambers, adjusting a crown that still felt foreign on her head. It had taken her 3 weeks to answer his proposal, 3 weeks of walking the line between who she'd been and who she was becoming, 3 weeks of visiting the wine bar daily, pouring drinks for regulars who treated her the same as always, reminding herself that crowns were worn, not absorbed into skin. When she'd finally said yes, Aaron had wept. The wedding had been held in the grand hall, wolves and humans celebrating together. The first time in the Dominion's history such unity had felt possible rather than forced. Bianca wore midnight wine and silver. Aaron wore traditional alpha regalia. And when they'd spoken their vows, the bond between them had blazed so bright that even the humans in attendance claimed they could see it. 6 months as queen had taught Bianca that power was less about crowns and more about the courage to use it justly. She'd opened 3 more wine bars, each employing humans and wolves equally. She'd established scholarship programs for human children. She'd sat through endless council meetings, learning when to compromise and when to stand immovable. She was still learning, still becoming. But tonight wasn't about kingdoms or politics. Tonight was about the beginning. The Gilded Vine had been transformed for the evening. Moonflowers draped across the ceiling, their petals glowing soft silver. Candles covered every surface. And the guest list was deliberately small: close friends, loyal council members, and regulars from Bianca's early days, who'd known her long before she was queen. Aaron found her in the back room, running her fingers over wine bottles, with the same reverence she'd always shown. "Having second thoughts about the party?" he asked gently. "Having first thoughts about this one?" She pulled out a bottle covered in dust, the label barely legible. "I've been saving it. From the year my mother met my father. I thought tonight seemed appropriate." Aaron crossed to her, gathering her into his arms with the easy intimacy of a year's worth of nights spent learning each other's rhythms. "She would have been proud of you." "I hope so." Bianca leaned into him, breathing in pine and iron and home. "Some days I still can't believe this is real, that I'm here, with you, alive, when I should have been killed for daring to exist. You didn't just exist, you transformed a kingdom. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Ready to face our guests? Almost. She pulled back, studying his face, the sharp angles she'd learned to trace in darkness, the storm-grey eyes that still held her captive. Thank you. For what? For asking, for waiting, for giving me the choice. Bianca smiled, touching the crown on her head. For making sure I knew I could say no. You can still say no, Aaron pointed out, only half joking. Abdication is always an option. Not a chance. She took his hand, their marks, matching now, his wrist bearing her sigil as hers bore his, glowing in the dim light. You're stuck with me, Alpha King. Forever? At least until the wine runs out. His laugh was warm and real. The sound of a man who'd learned to be happy. The celebration was everything Bianca hadn't known she wanted. Wolves and humans mingled freely, sharing food and stories and laughter. The seamstress's daughter taught a young wolf traditional human dances. Old Roger, the landlord who'd once threatened to dock Bianca's wages, toasted her success with tears in his eyes. Even Elder Malin attended, offering stiff but genuine congratulations. Bianca moved through the crowd, pouring wine and collecting stories, feeling more herself than she had in months. This was what she'd wanted when she'd said yes, not to lose who she'd been, but to expand it. To be both queen and wine merchant, leader and listener, crown and commoner. As midnight approached, Aaron found her again. The crowd had thinned, leaving only their closest friends scattered throughout the bar, talking quietly over final glasses. Come with me, he said, gesturing toward the corner booth. Their booth, where it had all begun. Bianca followed, sliding into the seat across from him, the position reversed from that first night. Then, she'd been the one pouring. Now, Aaron reached for the dusty bottle she'd selected earlier, uncorking it with practiced ease. He poured 2 glasses, the wine deep red and heavy with age. 2 anniversaries, Aaron said, raising his glass. 2 choices, Bianca countered. They drank, and the wine was perfect, complex and layered, tasting of love and loss and hope, fermented into something beautiful. Aaron set down his glass, his expression shifting to something soft and vulnerable. Can I ask you something? Always. That night, the first night, when I asked for one last drink, did you know? Even then, did some part of you feel it? Bianca considered, remembering the way her heart had kicked when she'd seen him in shadows, the inexplicable pull that had made her pour the wine, despite every instinct screaming danger. I felt something, she admitted. I didn't have words for it, didn't understand it. But yes, I felt it. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Did you? The moment you spoke. His thumb traced circles against her palm. Your voice, the way you refused to show fear, the quiet strength in every movement. I knew. The moon had chosen, and I was utterly lost. And now I'm utterly found. The bond hummed between them, steady and sure, no longer a wild thing but a cultivated connection, tended with care and watered with choice. Aaron, Bianca said softly, ask me again. He blinked in confusion. Ask you what? What you asked that first night. I want to hear it again, 1 year later, in the same place, with everything different. Understanding dawned. Aaron's smile was slow and devastating, tinged with the memory of who they'd been and the certainty of who they'd become. He leaned forward, moonlight catching in his eyes, and asked in that same low, rough-edged voice that had haunted her dreams for months. One last drink? But this time, Bianca heard the real question beneath. Not a request for wine, but an invitation to forever. To every night and every morning, to kingdom building and wine pouring, to being queen and woman and mate and herself all at once. No, she said, her smile radiant. Aaron's expression flickered with surprise. Not one last drink, Bianca clarified, standing and circling the table to settle beside him instead of across from him. Every drink, every night, every choice, for as long as we both shall live. She kissed him then, tasting wine and promise, and the future they'd built from moonlight and defiance. When they broke apart, Aaron rested his forehead against hers. The moon chose well. The moon chose first, Bianca corrected gently, but love chose back. That's what made the difference. Outside, the moon reached its apex, bathing the Dominion in silver light. In the palace, new laws protected those who'd once lived in fear. In the streets, humans and wolves learned to see each other as equals. And in a small wine bar wedged between a seamstress's shop and an abandoned apothecary, a queen and her king reminded themselves that some things, love, choice, hope, were worth fighting for. The moon had whispered destiny, but they had chosen each other, and that, in the end, was the most powerful magic of all. The end. If you loved Bianca and Aaron's story, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories where love rewrites destiny.